Hello, America. Hello, world. Humanity. By the way, I'd like to donate the idea of a hypermodule for for the Habitat for Humanity, and so we could mean stack, and so it could be in the hands of a real semi-chief, so we can make another nature of one too. In other words, with that mean stacking. Because since before our founders were born, the suburbs were designed tactically denatured, apart with the torture method that was simultaneously an extortion method. Because where slavery is, there is simultaneously invisible but still discernible extortion present. Where the course of black pupils and whites of eyes is abridged, it was abridged. They're simultaneously invisible but still discernible. There's the presence of other things, intersciences. There's the presence of their identity abridged, where they would be present, individually grouped and together. And this is relevant because Earth's a special difference. This is one of the reasons I'm the best teacher of English grammar in America and in the world. For me, I didn't even physically start teaching yet. I caught, everyone's trying to catch everyone. And that's not by accident. There's evidence planting. To understand, for example, and the problem with the immigration and the borders and the most powerful countries, even India, even in America, and we still have this same colonial, since before our founders were even born, sciences that could not afford the short words and revelations that come from a voice or a nature speaking for and how we are as individual, as an identity of volume that is simultaneously an identity grouped, that is simultaneously the species of volume, the species body of volume /s, therefore, and vice versa. This is true conversely. The identity of hyper origins is everywhere at once, because the identity of hyper relativity is hyper additive. It is only hyper additive to itself, and all exceptions in exception appearing in exception nature appearing to be a demonstration of other. It is really a demonstration of the same thing. So there is a correlative. There is a correlative conjunction. There is a coordinating conjunction, and there is the subordinated conjunction. It is also relative simultaneously where and how it is functional, that there is a hyper invisible but still discernible identity of volume with a distinct identity of relationship to itself, that they're only increasing value too as a scientific value, discernment of the and capability of being able to discern scientific, syntactically, the significance in the not just the value, the significance of. I lost my voice. The train of thought. In other words, but The identity of the hyper-simultaneous comes with Earth's especial difference because it, like your body, but now your body and your identity, therefore your name, has been used through a filter that has been defenses of and reliance upon being calm, for example, and or being other states, not calm. By inside of a breaching method, for example, that knew and understood that the ancients, wherever the calm is a value, or wherever where getting angry is a value, what is simultaneously where it is functional, how there is an identity of hyper invisible that has conjunction to where and how it is some things variably and it is some things constantly while being itself, where scientifically we can observe. So one of the things it is, we know that there are exceptions that appear to be in demonstration of other, but many ways it is observable that there is one identity of volume where value is nature / nature is value that is only increasing as space / existence. And where that came from, per science, begins and ends with what we know is true always. But this, like having the black pupils and the whites of eyes, and the slightest bit of understanding that a breaching method was applied against humanity of this continent and of every continent since before our founders were even born, and that had been sustained. And it had been sustained against the people furthering again with a humanity of canon identity of negative value nature progressions individually grouped in together. And in defenses of everyone's selves as fact treatment nature, they had to counter things like criminal insidiousness, as they still do. And so they had this breaching method knew that they would counter things like private criminal insidiousness and or like overt criminal enterprises wrong, and then self-value that as a certain type of victim predator that every identity, the ground locations, names, and every individually grouped and together were sustained roles with. But no one saw this, what was going on in the background, because the colonies themselves, individually grouped and together, were being used remotely. There's also where they are valued, where they were valued this way, we will all speak about it, they're still being used remotely. Their identity. Exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. Pretend you're playing a video game with your favorite boxer, and you're going to pick a style to counter this breaching method that forced everyone to roles with identity, the ground locations, no time treatments with the elements of sustenance. Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs to sleep. There's only so much people can take. Vaccines, but give it rest. I tell best the science is boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. The notes and the chords The notes of music, they share an identity individually grouped and together. English was revealed to teach this by that which is surging through all things, alone and even through the force, whichever course it takes. Vaccine. So Earth's special difference, we could be systems other than the one that uses it as a tool with our black pupils, whites of eyes, and knowledge that we are hyper-native pure. And so to me, as means to understand. That they were breaching methods. Every law they had was individually grouped and together, not for justice. That's what our founders left us to do. There was a breaching method, not just to use us remotely from there. They had roles with collusions where the laws were to keep everyone as a nature of fake pleasantry, as a nature of extortion. Everyone was a nature of slavery. And effectively in our faces, insidiously, simultaneously, overtly. And the slash is there because there are 3 volumes. There are 2 additional with 1 aspect, with 1/3 of our volume, per how English was demonstrably more probably revealed to be taught, for example. And each of the modern language, for example, the ancients taught it is more probable and demonstrably that and how the sounds were born with a better than living identity of relationship. For example, so as the identity of the fact that which is true always, wherein how there are cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall are manifest between with the species bodies, individually grouped and species bodies as volume this way. Which way is that? Where value is nature / nature as value. Vaccines. It teaches things of Lethe. A breaching method, sick as that, with laws to such. Through such. Let's vet. And let's notice what not has been not vetted. So there are time treatments there were time treatments demonstrably where they would use time simultaneously too fast and too slow to allow the victims to be able to demonstrate how they were using truths as lies. And I'll move it further, though, because we're going to get to differential criminally foreign influence. Each identity of the ground, even the branches of government, every member of them individually grouped and together. That means every type of police form, individually grouped and together. And then further, hyper-evidentially, with our individually the same place but different location. Every location was used by this breaching method that used the Republic and its campuses' database relationships revealed by the ancients before our, way long ago. And so it is necessary to understand how that torture method is something that has to be listed syntactically simultaneous with the breaching method laws and the criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes and its roles with the nature of precedence, the physics of precedence, and with the identity of precedence, where they too are 3 volumes bound. And this is because the nature of the law, the identity of the law, and the physics of the law, and the locations of the law, and the sequence relationships of the law. See, this propagated sequence, the value of sequence true, where stories, narratives are. regarding the value of things. So now this breaching method was what was the nature of something that everyone missed and misses, as is actually recorded. But for example, we have to follow where and how there are means to observe where and how really. If someone tries to use, in other words, if you go into this boxing game, this computer game, and you can pick your style for your fighter, and you pick the style, the your logic is that we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and know clearly that a breaching method had been applied against Native Americans, and we know that it screened itself by having other things, others or selves, even when correctly blamed them for what it did and does increasingly effectively. And so that's one of the answers why and how we have not used to fight where fighting only helped. If anyone wins, everyone was getting everything wrong. Everyone wins anyway. There's a way to fight that way. So this is one of the proofs that boxing, martial arts, and wrestling were revealed to help ferret out where, how, and when the identity or ground locations, voices individually grouped and together are being and haven't been used remotely. See, but this method took it to a completely sick, crazy extent. And that's overtly / insidiously in our faces. You will not believe what was being exploited at other locations, tied to all kinds of healthcare corruption, recorded roles with wire crime methods, fact cheating nature methods that are sick in locations where in ways using methods everyone's realizing these are individuals involved with more bad things than there are streets in Hartford, Connecticut, the capital of Connecticut. Hartford / Wethersfield, where or Wethersfield, where George Washington had to come to free. I mean, to force counter extort worse than the other founders. Roles to help win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Roles with phenomena. With where to counter only to an extent, where and how there was slavery entrenched North America and South America. Our founders left us not to leave out where and how and why George Washington had to leave slavery, forced. Therefore, he was a slave, sickly distinctly from people labeled black. And we all have blacker eyes than that. Yeah, I never seen anyone with that black. God bless you if you have black skin that way. But I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? In our faces. So there's a joke too, the outline of a joke. There's a great boxing trainer of a great city, of a great gym in a great city. As cities are, relative to that torture method. This was that set it up in phases. It had the laws and everything so sick and crazy, and that sustained. Don't forget against Native Americans first, then further its uses of its victims, of their narratives, of all that was in his juxtaposed. with its own method. Slash S too, because it's through all the other motivations, natures, needs, interests. Propagated is only capable of being, and parallel to where and to how they have been using, fact roles with fact keeping nature oriented and federal rules of evidences, crimes, and other natures of child abuse on and off the campuses of each age and nature, simultaneously intercities and through time. It's how it's relevant to where and how sense and sensibilities use Jane Austen's phrase, but to simultaneously demonstrate how archaeological evidences are about what's actually reality and hyper reality, and that's also comes with discernment of, is it hyper reality that's Earth's special difference is denied and being demonstrated, or evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere being demonstrated, especially regarding where we are fact shaping nature. It's one thing to say people don't agree because some punks that don't even know you and or they're switching fake identities know too, as people that also at the same time have had and have roles with identity theft, pretending to be me and people around me and others. So when syntactically they try to say anything, has to do with the relevance of where we have to can't leave out how the branches individually grouped in together. Their time treatments as knaves. They were backed into that same logic as the overt criminal enterprises and as the private ones and as that insidiousness of people A through Z that is equal to and in many ways demonstrably worse than in collusions against those kids, and then adults shooting with shootings on the mass scale one way first, and then on the different mass. And now it's a mass they're going in places and shooting a whole bunch of people. But it has not stopped. It was reported there were over 30 shootings this year alone in Hartford, and that's just shootings, and that's just in Hartford. And the only people that can counter that, their time treatments, they have job. Well, this is our subject treatment. This is the crime or this is not the crime. They left out how their roles are with names interbranch that have roles with these fact treatment nature predicate acts relevant. This is keeping the three branches of government intercities, interstates. Everywhere there is a state, everywhere there's the species body is standing, regardless of the type of government. That's one of the things they hide behind isms. If capitalism or if communism or if socialism could speak for honesty, not valuing lies, therefore the order of the finite, preventing the actual capability of contributions and value of contributions of any and every person individually, because that's where the finite details are. Really. So everyone adapts because everyone's locations and voices and natures were used. When they have narratives about people's social, about standard things of problems between, of dysfunction and or what's functional. Both of that is in collusion because they have the identity of the simultaneous as a value to logic and wisdom, fit through logic gates that are semi-nature possession of a complete identity that is a complete fake. Simultaneously, other ways it is not. But they're making debates about like in other words, the founders as conceived. They left out what they wanted them. They have a fake definition and they force. Oh, if you talk bad about that, you don't care about the founders. You have a broken grammar school, or they're like, oh, the founders are slaves. Now, either side, if they were treated right, you'd be able to make it. In other words, there's a differentially. People were differentially and are differentially criminally foreign influence, not wanting to be where logic is. But only you have only been allowed to hear other. And if you were told other, that is sensed and you are hurt, and they hurt the people who tell you that. They have been using the campuses, intercities, to hide life progressions from where and how the identities of ground locations are being have been used. It is also by a breaching method. They also use motivations narratives. So this forces us to use each other's names. So a lot of people will agree about things, but first of all, we have to get through all the, that's why people are mean to people online. One of the reasons. But you can't go by who's going being mean or not because of the sequence shifts you guys are covering up when you do that. Because of what you're covering up when you're offensively pretending you can't discern the capability of really sick lack of integrity with the FBI, for example, or with the CIA, or with the military, or with judges or prosecutors. When you know that witch trials existed, and you know that what they blame it on now is one of the things simultaneously when the courts of black pupils and whites of eyes, and that which is clear is abridged. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive, negative treatments and identity treatments simultaneously. Value treatments, value and identity. And therefore, why the maths, for example, share the value of the XY axis, not just for a means to map space location, existence. Where to make it, develop it. Real development comes by evolution science. It only feels like games. Only, or we are to sense. And so, each paragraph intends. I'll tell you truth here hence, and truth that using truths that do not deny the slightest finite detail left out. Do not value them having been left out. Because we're forever's course. Forever nature is one of the things. It is more probable that the ancients had, there's a difference between agreeing about things and observing things together. Observing and understanding things together is way better than agreeing about things. And see, this thing made everyone agree about things. It measures and maintains everyone agreeing with, doing that because it influenced it. And it needed that to increasingly appear in the past to be the motives and or now. Like when they make A or B, when they poll people, there's a worse than rat trap, lack of integrity that pretends it's integrity regarding the law and impositions against Americans and safety. That's and regarding the direction of development narratives and uses of that possession of each age of fact, human nature at each age and nature of campus, including fire campuses and including medical campuses. These have not been liberated from fact, human nature, predicate acts, method roles against each age of fact, human nature, sickly, distinctly, specifically to keep those short words that are with revelations from being used and or to be sensed through each country's own people, each location's areas and states, each identity ground location's own sense and needs to hide life progressions. Now, people need to pretend such as theory by forcing things asked about or we have what is recorded when there is slavery and witch trials, even if they are made up, and Jim Crow laws, even if the people get it wrong without realizing. There's criminal insidiousness is not just a phrase needed. It's not just because of how and why nature itself is demonstrating. It's needed to be used to describe the identity of nature as volumes, identity of relationship to itself, with positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments, and the value of that treatments. Not just because value is in demonstration of the same thing that identity is. There are distinct identities of positive and negative. And to be in demonstration of how it functions by being one identity of volume that no one could invent or be. We could only be guided by its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that within as the extent of the volume that we have as it to understand it. The identity that is hyper-simultaneous. That every species has a semi-nature relationship to itself as a species body, every member of it at once. It still has a semi-nature relationship. And so each parts of the body of each part of your body has a semi-nature relationship to your complete nature. This is what we observe. I'm not a doctor. We also know through time that and how doctors colluded with judges and police forms and other private interests. Also left out from this was exploitations of where and how our countries are directed demonstrably to hide their roles with other nations, and influenced also to that, but also influenced to simultaneously pretend to do other, and for motivations relevant where differential criminal foreign influence is involved. And overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z already was taken to collusion with the three branches of government, already all identity grounds names at those locations, already taken to collusion /S at other locations, where and how a certain type of victim doesn't realize the extent of the leaving out such guides to how to interpret behavior, where people are pretending they could interpret it properly, for example, when simultaneously we know they still have roles with what Captain keeps, where and how the revelations that come from having black pupils and whites of eyes, and understanding that there was a breaching method against Native Americans before our founding parents were born. That would then that then further additionally was against them in not just adapting ways, but in phases, effective phases. Those laws were so crazy against everyone. They knew that they were going to, people aren't just going to stay the possession of another country while they're having slavery involved with it, for example. And those crazy laws against everyone. Our founders wanted us to understand that breaching method. They wanted us to understand, to speak about how they did not have free speech, because if anyone spoke, worse than the sense and sensibilities of everyone, the nervous system, everyone would freak out. Because anyone who was sensed not uses of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and identity treatments and collusion and value treatments. In collusion, they were hurt. This is what we were educated to understand. In our faces, overtly / insidiously. Roles with that have to do with roles with database relationships since before computers. Fear, because it is righteous here. It is righteous here. Prepare. Vaccines. I teach you things alone. Train, be shown. Some rest, I tell best. Species body long, distinctly, but also not distinctly from, but and so while each, if let, if seen to breach. So, for example, proofs of this. I recorded that they have to hide lies from the television judges and or with them. They have to self-value a quality of fact-keeping nature they didn't realize is consciously being defended. When little punks say, or no, like, when you're speaking about, don't forget, I brought up in subjects, when you bring up serious things like abuses of kids, where police families and courts families are involved also with areas of overt criminal enterprise and private ones, I have to stack that in because it's relevant to where everyone's a victim predator. There's a certain type of victim predator that the people with the shootings are. To get it right, you have to describe it that way because it's the same reason you have to describe the victim predator that the interbranch are while they're fabricating things into databases. And sometimes they're just lying about their motivations because this is relevant too. To where and how he left out what I caught them doing with the child campuses of each age in Weathersfield and intercities through time, including the private schools and public schools. They have the hierarchy and the lowerarchy connected interstates, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, grouped, and together illusions, keeping them blamed on other things, others ourselves, because there are functions by that relevant to where and to how there is mental health care corruption and medicines racketeering right to the people that are the only types of counters to such. Attaching people to fake uses of alcohol and of drugs and fake because they've been attaching people to fake locations. They've been using rights to lies and cover up their roles with locations and plainclothes police and stuff like that. Demonstrably by using those rights to lie and hide things but by doing the opposite, doing it the way they don't have the right to lie. They've been lying at locations because they've been only capable of it. People A through Z, including the only people allowed to speak for the law. They have stayed also with the lawyers, private tied to have individually grouped and together, have tactical physical delusions, have roles with relevant predicate acts methods plural, whole predicate act methods, not just predicate acts. And as they have actually recorded natures involved, like a Trantolo and Trantolo. Nothing personal against them. I don't know them. I'm not gonna, I warned them. I didn't warn them. Online I did. In other words, now I'm going. I've been asking. They attach me to others. They change what people say because I caught them with child offenders of various natures, proven with the leaders of the kids, involved abuses of them, that relative to their roles with courts and other locations private tied to them, like news locations, retired and standing interbranch, and their family members, and the buildings next to them, involved intercities and how long routes, where and how they use, background locations, where and how they use with the breaching method facilitated and maintains self-value, which is uses of their locations where time is used simultaneously too fast and too slow to prevent the quality of fact-driven nature that can account for properly the way nature is demonstrating for us to account for exceptions in exception nature, where and how it uses it in ways no one else could invent, as hyper-additional nature, as where and how everything is being generated per a phenomenon, per phenomenon discernible with this. And for example, where the value of sequence true as an order of increased value, so value progression, the value of sequence true before the order of that, conceived now. For example, the proofs, we know that the value of history now, what really happened. And the order now, active. And the order of value of what is truth to come. What is truth to come when you live where hurricanes may come? And you live in the type of home on the scale. It has that nature that was involved with the torture method, which comes with where there's a slavery and extortion method, which comes with where there's a slavery method that was entrenched North and South America. Our founders left us to demonstrate how they had to force the North and South to fight about slavery syntactically, both of them as fake, still collusion with the breaching method. That's what they left us to teach. They left us to take the fake passions and aggressions and then to attend to the natural functions that passions and emotions are by and about the simultaneous nature. See, there are punk trick games with fact-cheaping and fact-cheaping nature that people A through Z have only been known. This is a punk theater game where they're taking fake pictures of kids with adults. They're making people recount things to pretend they didn't realize roles with them with predicate acts before that in that context and to come. And then came the World Trade Center attack with relevant names. I can prove that me and everyone, we love each other as a species. But to keep this voice from being spoken about, there's a certain method of identity theft / fraud / slander that is affected through others And so when you use their names, it makes it sound like they see, this is where they use proofs and evidences criminally, which is also relevant to where and to how the course of black pupils / whites of eyes / hyper native clear, that course abridged. And this is what we, for example, in Hartford, Connecticut, interbranch, individually grouped and together. I want to show you the mistakes you're making and how you're making it because of interstates. And federal inclusions also with the lower up. See, it's those organizations that are interstates, coordinated, and tied to the syntax and the sociology of people, the positive and negative treatments that are insidious. So they have relevance when we stay on the course of the revelations, but that only increased too when you observe everything relative to how the course of black pupils / whites of eyes / native pure, how that stands abridged. We know that the Native Americans more probably were about an identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that observation, because it's in demonstration that the identity that is both all things at once and what can't be and what is anyway, because it was is both and a third at the same time, making more and more of itself as value as nature / nature as value. The identity of space / existence. This we all agree about. And people who disagree, there are means to discern that they are wrong, including regarding the value or significance or relativity, no, of where and how the short words that say the course of black pupils and whites of eyes in that hypernative pure that is clear is abridged. The Constitution is abridged so many ways overtly that show the order of the finite, short words and or nature trying to speak for honestly about the order of the finite, the smallest finite details, the value of them, the value of other subjects, which would be conceived as such when it's more relevant, and that with a special difference associated with it. Some ways where they are valued to, some ways each musical note, each letter of the English language, each letter of the bound better than living identity relationship to themselves, other letters of other languages have. For example, individually grouped and together and coupled. Otherwise, actually forget the coupled part. It's a trinity. These are distinct identities of how it is invisible but still is discernible. So where there is the appearance of only Boolean options or true or false options, where it is the appearance of other details left out or the significance of that, left out or not. The relevance to that is reliant upon a method and nature of prayer that is scientific, completely science. It's a method in nature of contemplation that does not and cannot leave out the finest detail. Cannot leave out how others left them out and the value of that now or then. You have to give your all to understand, not just what's natural to understand, but it's through what used you and everyone around you individually grouped or together per a method that effectively locked you, incapable of responding properly or at all, or not reacting, or not freaking out and trying to change what people say. In other words, there is a poise by practical posture and by narratives towards what is calm or what other could be when they can't be honest about the calm or the other because they're not being honest about the simultaneous. What is proofs of this are tricks where they try to make you mad because they try to speak about people's motivations. The courts were not supposed to speak about people's, they're not supposed to speak fake things into records, but they've been doing that. And they've been doing it categorically to hide lies. There was a Lethe family that had fake conversations with me, with my family about legal cases where they have roles with predicate acts with the federal criminals in the cases and their family members, and their roles on and off news locations and Weathersfield Police Department involved with predicate acts with them, forging and switching names, and relevant confessions, and roles of, whole predicate acts methods they've been using. And this is just not my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but this is what is recorded, wire crimes, and that are also World Trade Center attack themed. And they have threats that they made about their uses of Saudis they forced to roles with them. Not roles they don't even themselves realize. There are various Scalora families, and there's an officer poisoning on and off Central Connecticut State University involved with some Hartford courts and New Britain Superior Court and people associated with a Connecticut District Court in New Haven and people with various probate courts and courts in Middletown through time that have been involved with, and all private locations, forensics locations. Through time, he uses everyone's family members, uses everyone next to everyone to keep self-valued roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments when people communicate with each other. And there are names uses as per that breaching method employed. See, a breaching method employed things off the records. Then while employed, and further through a method, everyone employing through our employments as we know them. But from before that, a method stayed distinct and stayed non-distinct while through it too, while as it now, as the sciences abridged, as economic treatments that left out the finite details, that left out the value, leave out the value, the order of the value of the finite, the value of sequence true. Connecticut news media and American news media and world news media has recorded how they're kept. There are counters too, but the counters stay collusions too. But self-value roles with sequence shifts and federal evidence is crime, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. Also, crime methods. Also, there are people that cannot speak at all that pretend like I don't know Lenny Triglia and Joe DeMar. If you see him or his cousin, they're some of the people involved with the courts and the former director of the FBI and the military, foreign and domestic, and private associated with them, and areas of overt criminal enterprises and private ones involved with people involved with predicate acts in my street with Wethersfield police through time. Other police departments too. And a police chief years ago, I don't know his name. I think I might have said they showed the wrong guy online. So I apologize, but that was their fault because they brought it up. They also used the crime method of bringing up people's names and having and their roles with crime scenes as conceived by them, increasingly distinct from what is actually the crime scene, the crime scene, but the hyper crime scene to discern it properly, to define it properly. Because a breaching method forced crazy natures of victims, and that had to be responded to. So the breaching method had to be blamed. So it was responded to, but others or selves were blamed instead. And that was defended exactly the way the breaching method knew would unfold when we were coming out of that phase, humanity. That phase of those crazy, crazy laws. Those phase of overtly / insidiously blaming the causes of other things, others ourselves. When nature has right there the order of the finite and the value of what really sequentially true. Like the value of understanding how the Native Americans were a certain type of right victim before our founders were just born, even distinctly from how when during the course of our founders' lives, and distinctly now. Because this preaching method that was using slavery set all those crazy laws and witch trials, all that set all those crazy laws up and natures of conjunctions between people. Sense and sensibilities, no, use Jane Austen's phrase. We're supposed to use yin yang, alpha and omega as archaeological evidences. We're supposed to use as English arts. For English arts, we're supposed to use phrases like sense and sensibilities, relative to the criminal insidiousness delivery system method. That was the sum of the method to those laws. And to the nature of them. Because we are 3 volumes being exploited, not just as individual, as they are to also 3 distinct volume sciences. Everything is in demonstration of the identity of the hyper-simultaneous as a scientific value needed to describe that which is actually capable of being discerned. By as that which is actually unfolding and having unfolded as space / existence. No space exists. The word space distinct from the word existence. Yeah. You know what's here. Hartford, Connecticut, world, Connecticut. Hear me. So the police forums with other countries, they've been using the social media narratives And reading, they have rolls of readings of statutes that left out all kinds of things, for example, because of their roles. For example, you should see the ones with badges who are also doctors of psychology. Their roles recorded with predicate acts methods. We'll examine this, not police form. We're going to delineate the delusions from their criminally foreign influenced souls. We're going to do this, Americans, New Yorkers. These are people involved with more World Trade Center crimes, the same ones tied to more child abusers, leaders of the kids, and natures in the background with their sense and sensibilities justifications, including where and how they don't know, and their justifications of it, because they should know too by now, as is actually recorded. We have, again, you know what it means, we have natural to discern that, and how the the quote experts of the sciences individually grouped and together as a value towards the styles of logic and of, relative to where and how people are making statements about how they feel about others. Content. That's all they're doing, because they're justifying. In backgrounds, they're keeping a chaos that is relevant to where and how they have applied worse than psychopaths, worse than criminal incompetence, where they speak about the justification, how they go, and they have a stack of files or whatever they have, and they treat cases and phone calls as police, as security people for the thing, as people responding to it about what happened at January 6th, about the significance of people noting that there are more relevant news predicate acts. News predicate acts is distinct from saying fake news, but it's fake news, but it's news predicate acts. And that's an understatement. So people would say that was an overstatement, and they have people just dreaming about what is right or not. Which is part of the reason where we have recorded the phenomenon of the FBI and of other agencies, where and how they've been discrediting good information, and they've been hiding bad and other information, because they have stayed criminally foreign influenced. Each member of each branch of government, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z. Strangers have been kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite active progressive lives, remote uses of their natures, times, as those natures online, saying whatever, just to prevent someone a response. Where and how they have wire crime acts and methods, fabricating audio and video transcripts. The police then affecting confessions and things like that. So if you call up again, then they could say you called a bunch of times, things like that. They made up fake conversations with me, so they need me to call them too. So the FBI cannot be trusted. They have pretended needs for trust, relevant to the crazy reactions people have. They have that maintained outcome, because there are natures of people associated with the campuses that know they need to hide live progressions by being styles. They need such base logic and physical delusions, relevant as the styles of the people, not with the insights into these natures and methods of organized crime, originally and still relevant to where and to how the course of black pupils and white divides remains abridged and hyper native pure. Not just Native American rights abridged. Hyper Native American rights abridged distinctly from Native Americans. As them, and see, but where everyone's negotiating rights, we can't negotiate all as hyper Native American until we get the Native American rights correct. And this is where we can learn about correlation nature. This is where the value of, the hyper Native American identity becomes increasingly valuable. You manifest where and how it manifests. So we can make that part of the theme of our program, associated with the YouTube video. collaboration, to 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 um to address, to mean stack, to overcome, and better than overcome all kind of things that you know all our money and resources keep going to do damage control relevant to, where that doesn't even need be needed. All kinds of ways we reveal means out of nowhere. Also by relieving needs to self value, reactions to the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that increasingly need to be blamed on other things, others, ourselves. So the news media increasingly has roles with a whole bunch of different countries that are too many at once for people to get into, because fluent through our countries is what has remote possession of each one of them, pretending they could speak for our identity, and they have not. Its words attend as this: black pupils, whites of eyes. In our nature, hyper-native, pure, prevented science is words and short words and revelations to put and so to prevent the protraction. And so, as collusions with those they have replaced, including our founders' words in our face, ye species body stand. No time to clappy chant. I'll shadow box some rest. I tell it best, boxing. I teach us things. See, before you guys are delaying me from training too, because they've been using locations. They also brought locations up in confessions. The people that the name stacking, interbranch and foreign brought up. See, they make you speak bad about the interbranch by doing crimes, and by calling and by lying about their motivations. They forge names and switch names. The prisons tied to them, and the names at the schools tied to them too. They're recorded also with journalists how kept criminally foreign influence per uses of everyone around them too. This is a method that exploits live progressions between campuses that never went away, and they were effectively employed for you know a programming of where individuals would be that described as electrons, with the theory as that electronics speaks of, where they are told to speak for science as theory. See, where they are told not to delineate theory from science. Each wire, each identity of conductor has a distinct identity of relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that is only relative to what is true always, not denying the slightest detail, the slightest fact, let alone, because then you can't order the value of the finite, which if you order what is also positive, not just positive, temporary to the order of the finite, but to that identity that is positive to itself, as what revealed between the species bodies and as our species body. This identity as its own, these things we share and do not, because it has a distinct, non-distinct, and hyper-simultaneous identity of relationship to itself. This is bigger than math and more finite than it, while as its value, /s, as that which is only hyper-additional. to and as itself, as all things, boxings. There is one, each identity of volume is distinct from each other. And part of the reason that we have a bunch of volumes is a part for where and how it wants and needs as much of itself as all parts of space/existence to be able to discern itself as it can. And that means its system too, because that means that something means its identity of relationship to itself as that, and it has it as a distinct way. It is hyper invisible, but still discernible. And how the value of that is only increasing too is a third way. It is hyper invisible, but still discernible. And so English was revealed to teach us this. Boxing. I teach us things. It's algorithms. They should not leave out finite details. There are only three branches of government. They're lying to you. They've been playing games with time treatments, with fact treatments at locations, sickly distinctly from at the formal locations. We'll examine their narratives by time treatments and what they call leadership, etc., and what they call their service. Hey! Let's all prepare. Vaccine.